It's said that it was worn by the rich and made by the poor. Lace making began in the late 15th century in northern Italy and Belgium and gradually spread to Ireland and became popular and fashionable. Although it did eventually decline in Ireland, there's now a strong revival of the craft, not just in Limerick, but in other parts of the country too. Suddenly, lace is becoming popular again. At one stage, though, it was a must-have for people of influence.
And until the end of the 18th century, men wore as much, or in some instances, more lace than women. After 1800, women were the main wearers of lace. The only men who would have worn lace, and then of course only for certain occasions, would have been church men, particularly Catholic clergy, and also to a lesser degree Anglican clergy.
And it became highly sought after by very influential people. For example, I understand Queen Victoria had £76,000 worth of lace when she died.
She did, although she didn't have as much as Pope Leo XIII. He had £200,000 worth of lace when he died.
Limerick Lace was established by English businessman Charles Walker in 1829, and between then and 1849 it became a mass-producing industry in Limerick, at its peak employing almost 2,000 workers. It was also taught by nuns as a means to try to ensure employment for young women. Conditions were often harsh for pupils and factory workers.
Conditions would have been fairly harsh, certainly by modern standards, because at the beginnings of Limerick Lace in the 1830s and early 1840s, about 3/4 of the workforce were actually children under the age of 15. Virtually all of the workers, of course, were female. And it was thought that female workers obviously were more docile as well, more easily controlled. But it mustn't be forgotten that even though their pay was fairly meagre, it was equivalent to that of a labourer at the time, a male labourer. And each of the lace workers would have supported maybe 2, 3, 4 relatives. And if you think that there was 1,850 lace workers in Limerick Lace at its height in the early 1850s, each of them supporting 2 or 3 dependents, we talk about several thousand people in Limerick that were dependent on the lace industry.
Limerick Lace collapsed from the 1860s onwards because of the importation of machine-made lace from Nottingham, and it wasn't until the 1880s that Florence Evan O'Brien rescued Limerick Lace from extinction.
She did a number of things to revive Limerick Lace. She set up a lace-making school here in town, in Limerick City, where the skills of lace making were taught to a new generation of girls and women. And she also employed women working in their own homes to make lace, which she sold for them. And then thirdly, she created a market for Limerick Lace through exhibiting at, say, for example, the World Fairs of in Chicago in 1893, St. Louis in 1904, and also by having Limerick Lace worn by important consumers such as Queen Victoria.
But Limerick Lace wasn't just for the rich in Irish society.
I think it was very important to individual families to create their own lace as heirlooms going down through their generations. So I would say that while, yes, it was primarily created for the richer people in society to wear, it was also important that families who made lace kept pieces for themselves to hand down. This is a tea gown. In terms of its function, we're not entirely sure because, as you can see, it's extremely delicate. It does have a little lining on it, but it doesn't have any fasteners, and the sleeves are open. So it could be like a little dressing gown that you would pop on, or it could be more for evening wear. We're not entirely sure. It's a beautiful piece. Like you said, it's a really large piece. So it really showcases the time and the skill that goes into making these pieces. It also has a very wide range of types of stitches. So it's really good to showcase Limerick Lace in general.
Today, a group called Friends of Limerick Lace is busy promoting it across the world.
My specialty is digital media design, so I came on board as a promoter of lace online mostly. And then together with the group, we designed a couple of brochures, and we put together a beginner's kit that now ships internationally. We get orders on Etsy from British Columbia, from Australia, from New Zealand, from everywhere. There are a few tutorials online, and we're hoping to make more. And we're working on a digital catalog. We organized another activity for a couple of years in a row, bring out your lace. And there were people coming in with family heirlooms showing us, is this Limerick lace? What type of lace is this? How much is it worth it? Can you fix it for me? And things like this. So we saw treasures coming in.
Limerick Lace isn't generally available in shops.
Nobody wants to sell it. They make it for friends and for family. These are family heirlooms, or they wear it themselves, which is a kind of a luxury, because in the past lace was made and sent out, and now people are making things for themselves that they can wear or have in their houses. So there's a real revival.
As part of this revival, there are classes taking place in Limerick, and we visited the Raheen Community Centre to meet an enthusiastic group at one of those classes.
Well, it started about almost 6 years ago when I'm involved with the Irish Country Women's Association, and our national president was from Limerick, and she was very anxious that we would do something in Limerick to remember her presidency, and she was hoping that we'd start doing Limerick Lace. At the time, we didn't have a teacher. So then we got to know Marion. Marion rang me one day and she said she could do it. So that was the start of it. So she came and gave us a demonstration of what she could do, and classes started at that stage. We have ICA members, we have people who are not ICA, we're open to anybody. So it has been most people come back year on year, which means that they like it. So we've no trouble filling classes, because we don't even have to advertise anymore. People just come along, they get to know we're there, and there's a waiting list.
Now, you're here with your mother today, I hear. Is this a family tradition?
No, just my family, because I dragged people along to lace classes. So
you dragged your mother along to a lace
I
class.
dragged
It's
my
normally
mother,
the other way around.
And I dragged my cousin along, who also does
So you're
lace.
spreading it out through the family.
I am, yes. It's so relaxing.
Right.
It's so beautiful. So I just do it at home in front of the TV, just pass hours and hours. So relaxing.
And who's better at it, you or your mother?
Me.
Limerick Lace is made by two methods, needle run and tambour.
Needle run is done with a needle and thread. The tambour is done with a crochet hook, very fine crochet hook. And you outline your design first for the needle run. You have your pattern underneath. Then you outline the pattern with a double thread, and you weave in and out of every bar, taking into account the shapes of the pattern.
And what have we here?
We have Limerick tambour lace here. It's done on the same net and on a hoop, and you have a very fine crochet hook to work it. So you bring up your thread from the bottom, you hook it up with the crochet thread, and you take a bar of the net along, and you hook it in, and your stitch is made. It looks like a very fine chain stitch when it's done.
Now, I thought when we came along here today that it was going to be very relaxing, but it's like a cross between a bridge tournament and an operating theatre. It's incredibly intense. And it
is really.
The eye, the hand-eye coordination, the delicacy, the light and the intensity of what you're doing.
That's true.
It's surprisingly intense.
It is very intense, it is, yeah. It takes quite a while to get used to it.
After her first attempt at making lace, one woman decided she was going to try to create a wedding veil.
So I saw the pattern in a library book belonging to the traditional lace makers in Cork. It was an 1890s Carrickmacross veil in the Ulster Museum. And it's kind of based on that, really. I thought it was nice and it was traditional. Didn't realise, I was a bit naive, didn't realise the work.
I can just
in
imagine.
The edging.
I mean, how much work was in this? How
There's
long did it take?
about 2,000 hours of work, because it's all obviously hand done and manual and what have you. But I enjoyed every bit of it.
While she was making the veil, Mary's daughter announced that she was to be married.
She didn't want to be under pressure, and she even said that. But I said to her not to worry, we could go out and buy a veil. So I said, if I don't finish it, I don't finish it, or if something happens or something goes wrong. Because with Carrickmacross, you don't know until you take off, until you cut it away, whether you might have had some mistakes. And in the cutting, it's very dangerous because you can see this is a layer of organdy that's put on net. So what's left of the pattern is the organdy that's left. But I had to cut away the rest of the organdy. So when you have a scissors in your hand with net, it's quite tricky. Marion laughed when I actually told her what I was going to do because she knew what was involved and I didn't.
So 2,000 hours over how long?
Over 2.5 years.
Wow.
I had to do about 5 hours a day, 5 days a week to meet the deadline. So it was like a job, but I enjoyed it.
Today, several groups and individuals are determined to keep the tradition of Limerick Lace very much alive.
There's a tremendous amount of interest in Limerick Lace as a very important part of the cultural history of Limerick. For example, it features in James Joyce's Ulysses. It's mentioned in Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes. It is referenced by Kate O'Brien in her novel Without My Cloak.
We have a treasure here in Ireland and it is not promoted enough. We are dreaming of establishing a lace study centre here in Limerick because of all the treasures that the museum has at the moment.
It's a very important aspect of our cultural heritage from an aesthetic point of view in the arts, but also from an industry point of view. And it's very significant that this year lace making was included on the list of intangible cultural heritage objects. It's very important that those people who are protecting the craft and passing it down through their own generations and taking the trouble to learn it and keep that they're using the same stitching and the same skills, and it's very important that those people are recognised.